I came to my senses. We're gonna put some cam bearings in this. He's gonna knock out this back plug here. I got this piece of wood just for doing this. We're gonna scrape it and then wire wheel it.
You can see I'm hanging up on it though.
It's just crustaceans from the water. Try and get it flat as we can. I'm just lapping these valves and making sure we have a good contact pattern on the valves and
so
seats.
far what we've done, everything's been fine. He's just going through this because he's, you know, and we're just cleaning everything up. Oh, you can see where he cleaned out everything that was in the way. There's a lot of casting flash, and you know, he was out taking his time, and he was getting it nice and smooth in this area. Oh, if you've got those gauges that, you know, separate, you want to measure this distance, and you shouldn't have it coming straight out. It's got to have a reduced size, so it's like a Venturi effect. They call it the throat. And you want this to angle, you know, as it comes in, it's doing an angle, and right here you want a nice angle. But a lot of times when you look at the intake manifold, some guys will run a suction vacuum underneath there, and they use Dichem blue, and they can spray it, and just a little bit, and then you can see how the air comes through the port. A lot of times one side hardly even gets any air. Most of it's going all to one side. But anything you can do to increase any flow is going to let the cylinder fill up with more air. This tool is just a quickie thing for squeezing down the spring, and then you can get the keepers out, the locks, or whatever you want to call them. But the way he got it when it was bought, and you're squishing down on the spring, and these ears were bent at such an angle, it was only touching on one side, and it was cocking, and it was hard to get the locks out. So we had to bash it on the vise and get it so it was more parallel and kept the retainer more level so I could get the locks out. These have to be the right diameter so these seals will pop on. They're a Teflon seal. And then they just scrape, there's a spring going around here that puts tension on that Teflon, and it just it scrapes the valve guide or the valve stem down so you don't have oil going down into the combustion chambers. You know, you look at an old small block Chevy, you didn't even have any on the vet. Some people put a little O-rig on there. Ford had a better idea with like a rubber umbrella, they called it. And it went along for the ride, but the oil that was lubricating all the parts, you know, goes off to the side so it doesn't go down the valve guide.
So I'm getting a really good print all the way around, lapping it in. Same with the valve. These must have been the valves that were in it.
Oh, what size is that? 2 1/8?
I think it's like 211.
Really?
Yeah, it's a big valve.
Yeah. This is another situation where it's nice if you have two people working on the heads, because one person can hold these, and even after you reset those like that, you should always give them a little tap to seat them in. But if you're all by yourself and you're trying to hold that and get those little clips in there, it's hard. It's a nice two-man job. So when you're taking these apart, you're gonna notice you're squeezing the valve spring down, and the valve's gonna wanna go with it because these two have cycled so long together, they're stuck together. So one person has to tap it to break that lock free. And that goes a lot nicer with two people. Unless you got a really good spring compressor that goes all the way around, holds the valve, and they're air powered, and you just psh. But when you're working, he got the cheapest tool that you could possibly buy, because we're cheap, And he knows we got 2 people to do it, so it works with 2 people. This valve does not want to come out because it mushrooms the slots where the locks go into. So instead of tearing up the seal, you gotta file away at a burr so you're not just tearing that through. At this point, you know, most guys will just, while you got it apart, you might as well clean all this carbon off of here. But if you chuck this up into a drill press and it's spinning, and you take a sandpaper roll on the end of a die grinder, you can buy valves that are custom that have swirl polish, and you can run that in here and you get rid of all this. And what you want to do is come right to that edge. You don't want to wreck the seat, so you got to be really talented with this and just lay it so you're coming right to that edge, and that lets the air flow better. So if you're ever taking an engine apart and you're wondering if it needs a valve job or guides, and you just take this valve and you're trying to wiggle it, and this doesn't wiggle at all, and it makes a suction. You know, it's like that. There's no way you can even have a decent valve seal if it's rocking around in there. It's touching on one side, touching on the other as it's bouncing up and down. When it's tight, then it stays perfectly concentric and it's slamming shut and it's sealing all the way around. But this is in good shape. When we were working on that vet, you could see how the guy should have bought new valves. And there was no margin left, and they did a valve job so much that the valve is sunk down into the seat. It's really poor for airflow. And you'll see this margin, and we got an 1/8 inch of margin here, where the other one was like, when you got it ground and it's going all the way to the end, that if it gets really hot, it can tool, or like an umbrella folding up on itself. That's what'll happen if it gets overheated. If you're ever gonna work on engines, let's say you're strictly Pontiac, and you make these stands, you don't realize how often these things come in handy. If this was just flopping around on the workbench and you're trying to hold all this stuff and get these little locks back in there, it would be a headache. You know, it's doable. You only do it once in a while, but if you're ever going to do this more than once, it's nice to have these stands. You can rock it around, get at the stuff that you need to get at, and then you just walk them down, and while you're doing this, then you're not fighting with the thing slipping out of your hands. As you're ripping your engine apart, he's only doing one at a time. These things can be, you know, just by themselves. This is like anti-wear thing for these hard springs that might be moving around, carving in. There might be shims underneath there. When you take it to a machine shop and they check all these for spring pressure, you might have a spring that's not as high of pressure on the seat as the rest of them. So they'll put shims up underneath there so you're squeezing the spring a little bit more to get the same equal pressure across all of them. So do one at a time. A lot of people would look at this and they go, get rid of that piece of junk. Obviously, you know, when you got a Trans Am, the thing's sitting really low, you're gonna tag something once in a while, and there's a dent going across here. Well, it's just a piece of sheet metal and contains the oil. We're gonna heat it up, warm it up with a propane torch, pound it back out, and when it cracks, most likely it'll crack right here, then you just weld it up, put water in it, check to see if it, you know, holds water. If it holds water, it'll hold oil. And paint it, it'll be good. This was all caved in here, and you just use some heat. I used a big ball peen hammer, and it'll hold more oil now. See, we filled it up with water, and we're checking for leaks. So if there's no leaks, then we'll fit it up to the engine block and see how it fits. Sometimes you gotta bend them a little bit so the gaskets will be squeezed equally all around. And then you get a block of wood, and we're gonna tap the holes backward so the oil pan, when you're tightening up the oil pan, you don't squish the gaskets where it's been over tightened in the past.